Too late. See, yeah. Okay.
And then I sit out the whole thing. So,
Feel free to hop back in anytime you want.
this is all you. Johnson, Baxter.
Failed startup, successful startup. Yeah, and I'll tell them that. You can just say I'm a local guy. I live in Mesa.
A local guy. That's a Mesa dude.
Yeah.
All right, I can do that.
I have a few notes that I may refer to. I saw it, yeah.
You want to use this one? Do you want to use this?
Yeah, I'll walk around with it, yeah. How are you guys tonight? Good. Good. But I feel like everybody's listening to me when I talk, you know. Feeling a little conspicuous here.
You ready, Dustin? Okay. Oh, we're live. And we're live. How about those Astros, you guys? Is anyone excited about that? I don't really care one way or the other, but I just thought it'd be a good icebreaker.
How
But you guys are busy eating.
How about anybody but the Dodgers?
Anybody but the Dodgers?
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for coming this evening. We have a very special guest. I only say that because you're my husband's boss. I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding about that, actually. He is. But tonight we have Matt Likens, 30 plus years of corporate and
really?
startup. 25?
It seems like
He's much younger
Yeah, it's been about a
than
decade.
I'm giving him credit for. Sorry. About a decade. I'm going to let him share a story with you because I can't do it justice, but you're in for a treat tonight. Anybody a BME major? Some BME? One BME. Wow.
One.
Who's business, WP Carey? Okay, a couple. The rest of you are engineering misfits? Maybe? Any Herberger? Okay, cool. Well, I will not take up any more time tonight, so without further ado, Matt Likens, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is informal. I don't know if you're like me. The last thing I want is more PowerPoints and somebody taking you through a story. So if this is going to work, we're all going to be involved in it. And so this is scheduled for how long, Brittany?
However long you want.
Yeah, no. It's,
Don't take up more than 2 hours.
yeah, so I want to take about 15 or 20 minutes and give you an idea of what my background is and how I got here over the last decade of my career. And then talk a little bit about lessons learned along the way, both at Fortune 500 companies and then in a startup environment. And so this is really an entrepreneurship program, right? So even though there are engineers and a biomedical engineer and some of the business folks are here as well, but everybody's interested in entrepreneurship. Is that true? Okay, and starting businesses and being able to be your own supervisor and enact your own vision of whatever that business opportunity is. So I will talk through a little bit of that because I was pretty late coming to entrepreneurship. So, and then I want to find out specifically what you want to get out of this as far as anything that I might be able to relate in my experiences that can be beneficial to you. So, sorry for my back as I walk around, but I'm more comfortable walking around as well. I'm also interested in where's everybody from? And we don't have to, but where did you grow up? What brought you to Arizona State? So maybe we start back there.
I'm from here.
No microphone, right? So we can't do this. It's not practical to do that. But maybe from here, from Phoenix? Okay, from Phoenix.
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City.
Texas.
Texas, what part?
El Paso.
El Paso. Been there many times.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Seattle.
Seattle.
Cave Creek.
Cave Creek, just north.
Boise, Idaho.
Great. Boise, Idaho.
Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Albuquerque.
Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York. That's wonderful. Yeah, great.
Tempe.
Tempe.
Phoenix.
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 Phoenix. Gilbert.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Chandler.
Chandler.
Naples, Florida.
Naples, Florida. My brother-in-law's in Estero. Yeah.
India.
What part?
The South.
Chennai.
Yeah.
Good.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Los Angeles.
LA. Oh, sorry about the Dodgers comment. Okay, really.
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
Rhode Island.
Rhode Island. University of Rhode Island. Home of?
Rams.
No, the Blue Hens.
Oh.
The Blue Hens, yes.
Nevada. Carson City.
Carson City. Great. Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to get an idea where folks are from. I've lived in like 10 different places, including 3 years in Munich, Germany. And I will pass this along when we get into the interactive part. And I find it fascinating to see how folks come together in one location and where they're from. So I'm from northeastern Ohio originally, near Akron, Ohio, and grew up in a small town, Ravenna. I went to Kent State University. And it still grinds me when Ohio State University calls itself the Ohio State University, because it's not. There's Kent State and Bowling Green and Toledo and Miami of Ohio and a number of other worthwhile institutions in Ohio, Kent State being one of them. I went to Kent State for one reason: I could afford to go there. My mother worked in the registrar's office at Kent, and so I got an employee discount to go there. And my first quarter tuition was $92. So that was relatively reasonable. I had a $100 Rotary scholarship, which I thought was a pretty big deal, and I got $8 back for the first quarter tuition. I also walked onto the basketball team and played basketball there for a couple of years, and then intramurals. And when I graduated, I went different degrees. I wanted to be an anchor man, you know. And then when I saw the movie with Will Ferrell, you know, I knew I'd missed my calling. I wanted to be one even more. But when I saw the job prospects of coming out of school with a telecommunications degree, I was tired of being poor, and I thought maybe I should get into a different field. So journalism, you know, that's not much better, but I moved there. And then beginning in my junior year, I transferred to the business school and majored in marketing. So I had a number of classes to make up because I hadn't started in that major, but was really happy with marketing because it really is all about understanding people and motivations and why they might buy something and at what price and with what type of promotion. And I loved all those P's, you know, being brought together to have a strategic plan as far as how you're going to be successful in a business. Graduated from Kent State and went to work for Johnson & Johnson, the large healthcare company. Wasn't as large at the time, but I liked it because it was a solid opportunity, and I started in a sales role. But Johnson & Johnson had one division that was an industrial tape division of J&J at the time, so nothing to do with healthcare. 300 different types of tape, competing with 3M, primarily with 80% of the market, and J&J Permacell division had 10% of the market. And of course, when you're at a company called Permacell, you know, it's often mispronounced. Sometimes it's Spermacell. Sometimes it's perma-smell. So not necessarily whoever was the marketing person who established that name, wasn't such a great decision. But anyway, competing, and then my sales territory was in Minnesota. Lived in the Twin Cities, competing with 3M based in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I found going out into the marketplace that everybody knew somebody who worked for 3M, somebody in their family, 80% market share, very, very challenging. And so I learned rejection very early in my career. And you can respond in two ways. One, it makes you work harder and figure out what is the magic in making this happen. And what I found was, in fact, the lessons learned at J&J is a solid second supplier is always of value. And if you can position yourself to say, hey, what if the 3M plant burns down? What if they have a product recall? You don't want all of your eggs in that basket. Every buyer wants to hedge their bets and wants to manage their own risk. And so if with 10% market share, if I could get 15% of a large company's business, that was a 50% growth opportunity for me. And so I also found out that the large dominant suppliers in almost every industry inevitably begin to take the business for granted and become complacent, and that's why there's room for the small player. Even if it's differentiated in a small way technologically, service, relationships can build that. So there's lots of ways to be successful in a business, not necessarily with the best technology, but with the best market approach overall. 3 years selling tape, that was enough. But I was in Minnesota, transferred down to Houston, Texas, and 3 months later joined Baxter Healthcare. So Baxter's based in Chicago. At that time, blood collection, transfusion medicine. I moved into hemophilia and dialysis and immunotherapy and a number of different therapeutic areas. And I ended up being with Baxter for 23 years. So that's how much of an entrepreneur I am. 2 Fortune 500 companies, 26 years of experience. What did I learn at Baxter? Baxter was more a financial institution than it was a healthcare company. And so financial discipline is critical, but they sometimes forgot the value of the customer voice. And so anybody who's building their own business, the one top suggestion I have is make sure you're as close to the customer on an ongoing basis as possible. And not one, but a lot of customers. And really listen to the ones who aren't doing business with you. Because the other thing that happens is when you start doing business with a group of customers, you tend to only listen to them. And they will only give you information on one side of it. Why aren't you doing business with others? And be open to that feedback. Baxter also taught me that they had a saying, the 3 R's, the values of Baxter: respect, responsiveness, and results. So respect for the individual. Everybody should be respected equally, independent of their level in the organization or what they did. Responsiveness to the customer should be a really high priority for everybody, not just the people in sales or marketing, but the R&D team and the engineering team and everybody. And results, we're all responsible for results. And so that sounds pretty balanced, right? I mean, if you do that right, your business should prosper. But what happened over time is that Baxter forgot about those first two too often, and it ended up being the 3 R's were results, results, and more results. If the results weren't there, it didn't matter how you went about your business or how much respect you had for your counterparts, or you were gone. And people who got results, independent of the way they got results, were rewarded. So it only took me 23 years to figure that out and decide I wanted to do something else. But Baxter also had a mantra that we had critical therapies for life-threatening conditions. And so that means a lot to you. You feel like you're doing worthwhile work, that the general population can benefit from the result of your work. again, on the development side as well as on the marketing side, that if they were using our technologies, the patients would fare better, and that was a really good feeling. And they really did take a lot of pride in the clinical outcomes that we could get with our technologies. So again, in your own business, I think it's important to define what you want that business to be. Brittany mentioned that her husband, Brian, and I have been working together for 4 weeks now. So we are developing a work relationship. And our company is, I don't know if anybody saw Dr. Dave Brackman speak a month ago or 2 months ago, but he's the chief medical officer of a company called Gamatile. We're actually changing the name of it to GT Medical Technologies. Gamatile remains the name of the product, the first product to market. But we also have a tagline of improving the lives of patients with brain tumors. So every time we say we're with GT Medical Technologies, we're improving the lives of patients with brain tumors. Just like that, and 4 of us now who are associated with that business will do that. And as we grow to 10 people and 15 and 20, that tagline will let everybody know that's what we're all about. It can be as simple as that. And beyond that, we are going to establish the new standard of care for patients with brain tumors, the new standard of care. And it's very exciting, and I'd like to tell you more about that a little later. But like critical therapies for life-threatening conditions, I remember this now. I left Baxter in 2001, right? I was there a long time, but 16 years later, results, responsiveness, and whatever, respect roll off my tongue. So some things stay with you. And then I went to a startup in 2001, a well-funded startup in South Florida. I was not the CEO there. 14 different technologies under one roof. They had all been licensed in, and we had a group of 75 people, and we were going to develop them into products and get them ready for market. And $180 million had been raised to support that effort. I mean, a lot of money. In 5 years, it was all gone. And so the CEO of the company was a physician, a very accomplished person, one of the smartest people I've ever met. But I learned everything not to do in a startup in that 5-year period. So it was painful going through that process, but I emerged from that with some really valuable lessons that really benefited me as I moved to Arizona. So coming out of that, it was April of 2006. I had a son who was going into, well, he was just graduated from Syracuse University. I still have that son, actually. He got a degree in broadcast journalism and has his own sports talk radio show in South Florida. So that's his passion. I wanted to be a broadcaster, right? So I'm living vicariously through my son. I listen to all of his broadcasts, on the internet, and he's really good. He's got a really good broadcasting voice. I have to act like I have one, where his is just natural. So it's great. And our daughter was entering Indiana University. She got a degree in marketing undergrad, went to work for J&J for 5 years, sold for them, and then resigned and got an MBA from the University of Michigan. And now she's with Medtronic in neuromodulation and pain management in a leadership development program for them. So she'll be moving to different places, different types of business units over the next couple of years and getting that experience. I wanted to fill in that process. So in April of 2006, I needed a job, basically. And I wanted to be a CEO because I wanted to try it myself based on lessons learned. Some really good practices at J&J and Baxter, some not so good practices at GMP companies. And there was an emerging company out of Mesa, Arizona, with focused ultrasound and imaging combined. And it was a brand new technology. Michael Slayton, literally a mad Russian scientist. And I say that with a lot of admiration because a brilliant gentleman, 110 patents on the technology. And they had developed this, some of it in conjunction with Johnson & Johnson, $23 million of capital going into it. But they had switched courses and decided this was going to be used for firming, tightening, and lifting of skin. You would deposit focused ultrasound. In an hour, you create about 15,000 points of thermal coagulation at 3 different depths throughout the face. You ablate the tissue in a nanosecond, and then those 15,000 points start to heal, and they actually begin the process of building new collagen. And so the new collagen firms, tightens, and over the course of 3 to 6 months, there's an actual lifting that goes on. It is very reliable, and it's one of those aesthetic technologies that actually works. Not as important maybe as treating patients with brain tumors, but there's a lot of money for something that actually works in the aesthetics industry. So we had a long time getting it approved from the FDA because it was so novel. There was nothing like this on the market. And when I moved to Arizona, Michael said, you have to come out here quickly, Matt, come out quickly. We're 90 days away from FDA clearance because we sent our 510K and it's 90-day turnaround. And 3.5 years later, we got FDA clearance. So it was a bit of a challenge that way. But I had global roles at Baxter for a significant portion of my time there, including living in Munich as the VP of Marketing for Baxter Biotech Europe for the 3 years. And so I see everything as a global opportunity. So I start with the globe and then figure out which markets it's not appropriate for, rather than this is US, 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 and then, oh my gosh, maybe there's the rest of the world out there. I would encourage all of you, with whatever businesses you're considering, look globally first. Doesn't mean you're going to focus globally, but it means there may be a better market to launch your technology than the US to start with. And regulatory pathways may be easier, simpler, and the CE mark was much easier to get for us, Certificate of European Compliance, so we actually launched first in Europe and parts of Asia that recognized that mark. And in 2008, fourth quarter, we shipped our first 10 systems out. System was about the size of a desktop computer, and it had a disposable with it. If you're going to sell capital, make sure you get into a business that has an ongoing stream of revenue associated with the use of that capital. Either there's a subscription on a monthly basis, there's a disposable that's being used, so that's very important. If it's only a capital business, you have automatically limited the total opportunity for your product. So we started selling first 10 systems, $500,000 of sales in the fourth quarter of 2008. Not very much, but the first revenue coming in. And in 2009, we got FDA clearance in Canada, the Canada, Health Canada approval in May, and then FDA in September, and launched in the US in January of 2010. So we did $5 million in revenue in 2009, and then with the FDA and another stamp of approval and Canada moving, and we started going elsewhere and getting distributors in Latin America and other parts of Asia, we grew to 18 million in 2010, 41 million in 2011, top line, 59 and 41 million in 2011 with a $300,000 bottom line. So we actually were profitable in 2011 at the end of the second year that we were selling the product globally. 59 million, 81 million, and we ended at 117 million the year that we sold the company in 2014. So it was a rocket ship in a way, and when we hit the 117 million in 2014, that generated almost a $20 million bottom line. So we had great margins, and we managed our costs very aggressively. We managed our expenses. So one lesson. So I mentioned the startup in South Florida, GMP companies, $180 million raised. It's completely irresponsible to not get any value out of it. There's only one of those 14 technologies is still viable today. And it's not a successful business, but at least it's still operating. So just a tremendous lost opportunity. And so we actually had operating principles at Ulthera, and one of them was cost effectiveness. So no matter how much money you have, especially in a startup environment, before you have a technology out there where you're generating a gross margin, every dollar is really important, and you have to infuse the organization with that mentality if you're going to have any chance to eventually thrive as a company. And whoever's leading the company has got to absolutely emulate that practice. So we started outside the US. We were flying in a lot of places. I mean, I'm almost 6'4". I don't like sitting in coach on international trips any more than any of you do. And so I could have, secretly upgraded, right? No one would know. Yes, they'd know. Somehow, these things in small organizations, everybody knows what you're doing. And if you're the leader of the organization, they're watching you for every cue. You have to understand that. So I didn't upgrade. And I have back problems to this day as a result of it, but we got the product launched, right? And so that's the important thing, is that there's a hierarchy, right? But you don't need to emphasize. Everybody knows you're the boss, right? And the last thing you need to do is remind folks of that. If you have to do that, you're doing other things wrong. And so if you're starting a company, establishing a culture in a very intentional fashion. So I would encourage you to really think through, what type of operating environment do you want to create? Because if you're successful there and create the right operating environment, you'll attract the best people. And your future and the horizon that's out there is most defined by the quality of the team that you're able to pull together, independent of the product or the technology that you have. You could have the worst product and the best team and have a very successful business. And I can't tell you how many examples of really great technologies that have been wasted because it was the wrong people, or egos got in the way, or the leadership wasn't right, or there weren't any operating principles. There was no big, hairy, audacious goal. Nobody was really intentional about the culture. So that's something that's easily avoided, and you need to be very intentional about that. So a couple more comments, and then I'd like to open it up and hear what's on your minds. So I'm not an engineer. I'm a marketing person, and I started in sales, and I really value that. But I think everybody in an organization should be in sales. You should be representing whatever company you start or you're part of, and be promoting that company because you believe in it. And everybody's got the ability to do that. And a lot of people think, well, that's somebody else's job. Well, that's not the type of person I want in our company. I want somebody who owns it and believes it and is willing to talk about it. So it's almost evangelical in a way, but I'm not going to go, religious on you. But there are aspects of it that are that way. So the advice that I provide my offspring is the same thing I'm going to tell you about. And our daughter's doing this now. At 22 years old, with an undergraduate degree, or 24, or 25, or 28, or 29 with an MBA or an advanced degree in engineering or a PhD, if you haven't actually been out in a number of environments and worked in those environments and sampled various work cultures, how can you be intentional about what culture you want to establish in your own organization? I mean, maybe just innately okay? And maybe Mark Zuckerberg was like that, right? Steve Jobs had a culture at Apple, and then he was kicked out, and then he came back, and right? And Bill Gates, maybe he had that years ago when he started Microsoft with Wozniak, but most people need to sample a few cultures and need to get out there in the marketplace to understand what really resonates for me. What type of management style? What type of leader do I want to be? How do I want a company what do I want this environment to be like? And so if you know that innately and you have confidence that you can do it, then don't work somewhere else first. But I like the idea of starting in a larger company. First of all, you learn the social aspects of being out in a workforce every day, and large companies got large for a reason, right? They must be doing something right. And yes, are they bureaucratic, and are they sometimes difficult to navigate through and sometimes frustrating from that standpoint? Absolutely. But learning why they're that way, why they've evolved, they didn't used to be that way, but they grow to be more bureaucratic over time, and they grow to be more risk averse over time. And it's frustrating when you have an entrepreneurial mindset and you want to make decisions and act and move forward. But you can learn so much there, and There are no safe environments, but it's a little bit safer, and you can start developing your own vision of what you want your organization to be and what kind of leader you're going to be and what types of people do you want to attract and how are you going to operate in order to accomplish that. Also, I'd say don't worry about titles, okay? And it's easy to say when you're the president and CEO of something, yeah, don't worry about titles, right? But as you move through your career, I think the most important thing is to make sure you're always learning, okay? So once you get to a point, you've been doing something. So in 23 years at Baxter, I had 10 different positions. And fortunately, I kept getting promoted, so more responsibility, and that's the reason you stay somewhere. So every 2.5 years, I was doing something different, and other geographic responsibilities or new technologies or other therapeutic areas, and so it continued to be quite stimulating for me, and I got a lot out of it. But in 2001, I wasn't learning anymore, and the fact is, I was a top 60 in a 50,000 person organization, and I looked at the 10 people above me who were reporting to the CEO. I only had confidence in one of those people. And I said, why am I still here? I've got to go someplace else. And I always wanted to get into something that was earlier stage. So that's, again, I'm a little slow, right? It took me a long time to get to that point. But for you, I would say, if the opportunity that you're looking at allows you an opportunity to expand and grow and learn, that's a great opportunity. Money's got to be where it needs to be, but I don't care if they call you the dishwasher or the director of something. I mean, a nice title is great, but nobody really cares anyway. And what matters is whether you're really learning. Continually develop your personal network. Okay, I didn't do that at Baxter. When you're in one company for so long, you feel, I'm going to retire there, right? And it doesn't matter. I have the network within the company, and so you all are much better suited to that with all of the social media activities that are going on today. I understand there's this new thing called LinkedIn that's pretty effective. Has anybody heard of that? Yeah, so link in with me. Okay. That's, I've got operating principles here, and I've got some other advice, and I've got some books, 3 books that I think would be really great if you're interested in that. But I'm going to stop right there because you have an idea of what I've done and who I am and whatever may be relevant that you want to ask about. Let's make this interactive. I said it would be interactive. So who's first?
Use a microphone.
Use the microphones. Sir, you have a microphone on that table? Now you do. Oh, might have to turn it on. How do we do that? Just like that. Maybe I should go into engineering.
Would you say struggle is necessary in order to, for a better outcome, to struggle over some time, just to go with this, just go with it? You know what I mean?
I would say that. I think that, again, if you have the right attitude and you're not defeated by the struggle, but you're stimulated by the struggle, and you don't let it get you down, and you say, what can I learn from this experience? Whether it's difficult people that you're dealing with, or a difficult business challenge, or an engineering hurdle that you have to overcome, those are the times when you really learn the most. And that leads to lessons learned that you can apply many times into the future. So if I hadn't had the 5-year failed experience in South Florida in that startup company, I wouldn't have been as well prepared to lead my own company and to build it the right way with the right values. We had a big, hairy, audacious goal that we wanted to create $1 billion of value in this company. And anybody who came on, we could tell them, hey, this is where we're going. Now, we only sold the company for $600 million, okay? So it was a miserable failure. I missed it by $400 million. But if my BHAG would have been $500 million, maybe we would have only sold it for $300 million, right? We had another BHAG also, a second one, 100% treatment efficacy with Ulthera. We wanted every patient who got our treatment to get the desired clinical result. And actually that was very much connected to building the financial value of the company, right? So anyway, good question. Who's next? Yes, do you have a microphone? Is there one on the table? Or should I just take it over there? There you go, is it turned on? Great. And your name is?
Mahina.
Manita.
Mahina.
Mahina.
Yeah,
Good. This sounds Hawaiian.
it is. That's where my family's from.
I used to live on P.E. Koi Lane
Oh, really?
in Libertyville, Illinois, of all places. There was a P.E. Koi Lane. But there's a P.E. Koi Street in Honolulu.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, absolutely.
You misled me.
I've got connections with everybody in this room. We're going to find out what they are tonight. Okay. Yes.
So I'm an engineering student, and I was just wondering, in the businesses you worked with, like, how closely are you working with the engineers or the scientists or the product developers? Like, do you guys collaborate on the business and the development side, or is it separated?
It's not separate at all. And if it is separate, that's an organizational flaw and an operational flaw in the company. So I think the head of the company needs to, with the team, establish what is the vision for this company, where are we headed? And maybe it's a BHAG, or maybe it's the strategic plan will get us here in 3 to 5 years. And I really recommend that you don't really think, you can think beyond 3 years, but have a strat plan that encompasses the next 36 months, okay? Because that's not too far away. You can imagine what that third year is going to be like. And then everybody in the organization is part of developing that strat plan, and they know what the engineering roles need to be and the priorities. Marketing understands, the operational people and manufacturing understand what's required from them. The sales force knows what they need to do and the prices they need to charge and where we're going with this, and then everybody's moving forward together. And it gives you a chance to be successful. If one of the key functions is left out of that equation, you could still get there, but it's just that much more challenging. And why? Why do that? It's actually, the organization, it's almost like a body, right? If you have an infection somewhere, it's going to affect the rest of the body over time. So you can't afford to have that. So part of that is the meeting rhythm that's established in the organization. So how often does the whole team get together? At Ulthera, as we grew from second employee to 220 employees when we sold the company, once a month we would all get together. And it might be for just a half hour, but it was, hey, here's what we accomplished in the last 30 days. Here are the key priorities moving forward. And we'd highlight one of the functions, say, what are the issues you're having? What are the accomplishments you've had in the last 30 days? So everybody would stay involved and understand they're part of a much bigger enterprise. And the sales force would be on the phone as well in a conference call, because the people that are remote often feel left out, and you've got to make them feel part of the organization. And twice a year we get the whole company together in person somewhere in Arizona because we were here, and everybody wanted to come to Arizona in January and February anyway, so it was a great time to do it so that we could mingle that way. Once a week I had a senior management team meeting, and every 2 weeks I would meet individually with every direct report to make sure that we were communicating. So establishing what's the right meeting rhythm for the business you're going to establish. What kind of communication has to go on an ongoing basis? It's a real challenge, and if you're not naturally a communicator, you may want to bring somebody on with you who can help you in that task. And engineers, the stereotype, right? You just want to sit in front of your computer and your CAD and your CAM and design things. Well, it doesn't work if you're going to lead a company. And so again, if you're not going to do it, complement your skills with somebody who's better suited to do that and can execute for you. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I have a follow-up to that. So,
Hey, does she get a follow-up? Is that okay with everybody?
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you, guys.
I know there's so many other questions you guys are just waiting to ask.
So just going off what you said, would you recommend that engineering students or just students outside the business school who are looking to get into making a business, like, take business classes, or look more for people to fill in for that side?
No, I think business is part of life, okay? Not that engineering isn't. And so whether it's specifically taking those classes, for your own company, or just broadening your understanding of how things work in the business world, I would recommend trying to fit those in, or having a minor in a business discipline. And so I'm a marketing guy, but I would recommend finance or accounting, so that I think it's important for you to really understand the numbers, especially if you're going to be running your own companies. and you can get that it's relatively straightforward. And generally in engineering, you're really comfortable with numbers anyway, so it's kind of a natural. Next. Yes, you have the mic. And your name?
Trace.
And I didn't ask that gentleman with glasses his name.
My name is Sekou.
Eku?
Sekou.
Sekou.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Cool. Mahini, Sekou, and Trace.
So with the 5-year failure company that you were with, what would you attest the failure to be? Was it bad decision making, or was the product not fitting the customer's needs?
So, if I had to boil it down, I mean, this could be a long discussion, but we had 14 different technologies, and actually, if we were to have practiced portfolio management, so there were 2 or 3 of these technologies that were pretty valuable, we thought, and they were a little further down the line of development and closer to the market. And with $180 million, you know, we could have developed all 14. We thought we could, but the smart thing to do would have been to say, okay, we're going to put these other 11 on the back burner for a while. We're going to focus think of your resources as limited, no matter how many you have, right? And we're going to focus those on getting these 3 to market. And then whatever we generate with that can support the development of the 4th highest priority, or the 5th, or the 6th. We didn't do that. So the CEO felt like he had an obligation to all 14 licensors, or we were the, well, whatever, we were the licensee. It was almost like, you know, if you grow up in a family, I mean, I had 3 siblings growing up, you know, and you want to treat all your kids the same, right? You don't want to have favorites, right? Well, that's the way he felt about the 14 technologies. Those were his children, right? And so we didn't practice portfolio management at all. And that, to me, that was the cardinal sin. And also, he didn't, so since we're on video, I won't tell you some of the odd things that happened as well. So let's just leave it at that. Good question. Next. Yes.
I'm Clayton, and so you said you need to develop a culture to attract like intelligent and driven people, and you want your company to be established, but how do you attract good employees to join the company before you're established with like a product or you have like a lot of funding?
Yes. So what do you think? Not to put you on the spot, but or let's open it up. So anybody else thoughts on that? Because I have an idea, but oh, I got a microphone. Yes, and you're?
I am Cameron.
Cameron, Clayton Cameron. We got the C-squared here. Okay.
My initial thoughts would be to actually have a good product and a good motto, like he was saying. Also, you know, ensure that you're going to be giving the employees benefits. That's general, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, so thinking about benefits. Anybody else? There was another hand? Yeah. Yes. You're?
Jacob.
Jacob, yep.
I was just going to say, like, not necessarily having, like, a good product. It might be more helpful to just have a good, like, idea of what you want to change in the world, and if you can get other people to align with your goals, then that would be a good way to attract other workers.
Excellent. Great. I love that. Love that. Anybody else? Any other thoughts? Yes.
I'm Fram.
Graham?
Fram.
Fram?
Yep.
Okay. How do you spell that?
It's F. Well, that's like my nickname.
Yeah, Ephraim.
So, huh?
Ephraim?
My full name?
Yeah.
Is Fado Matters.
Is what?
Fado Matters.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
okay,
it's a little
Fram.
bit. It's a little bit of a mouthful.
All right. All right.
I think it mainly just starts with yourself, I guess. Like, if you have, like what was said, that if you have a good vision, if you are motivated, you're like passionate about your idea, then I think that like that energy like brushes off on other people, and that's how you can attract the right kinds of minds to your company.
Great. I love the ideas. Anybody else want to weigh in? So, first of all, I think, Clayton, I think the important thing, the most important thing is for you as the leader of the company to be authentic. You need to be who you are and no one else. You can't act. I'm going to act as a CEO, at least while I'm at work, and then I'm going to be who I really am elsewhere, because people will figure that out pretty quickly, that, it's not real. So I think you have to be real. And then you have to really think through, what is it we want to become? And it's really, it may start with you, and you may socialize. To me, I need to socialize ideas with others and hear others' ideas, and then over time refine, okay, so we're going to improve the lives of patients with brain tumors. Okay, we reached that in the last 30 days. Brian Martin and myself and Dave Brackman, Dr. Brackman, the radiation oncologist, and we're hiring a VP of Ops who starts in November, and we all got together and say, that is what we're going to do. And in a sentence, and it's a pretty succinct sentence, everyone will know what we're doing. That's the end goal here. Help as many patients in the world who suffer from brain tumors. And so that feels really good. And as we're out trying to raise money, we're trying to raise $2 million now in a seed round of financing, it's resonating for people because everybody knows that it's an issue. And they know that recurrence happens way too often and too soon. And our technology can extend the time significantly. Maybe a recurrence never happens, but if it does happen, it happens months and months later than it would have otherwise. So it's really thinking through that and having something that's real, that you believe in, you're authentic about it, and you'll attract the right people. I think another part of this, and it's pretty common now with most startup companies, but I don't want to go there and work for somebody. I want to go there and be part of the ownership team. So I want some stock options. And so at Ulthera, as I joined the company, I said to the board of directors, I'm only going to do this if there's enough stock in the employee pool, not just for me, and not just for a few people, but for everyone. So everyone who joins the company will become an owner of the company, and their stock will vest over 4 years, 1 month at a time. And so not only is that a great employee retention capability, but it also, you can appeal to the best instincts of people as owners. Do you see how people treat rental cars versus how they treat their own car? Have you ever gotten a car wash in a rental car, for instance? No. And so I want them to come to work every day, and when we say, hey, here's our issue. And if you have a decision to make about, $1 million capital expense for the tooling that's required in order to build your product the right way every time, you're going to get 3 or 4 bids for that tooling, aren't you? Because it is your business. It's our business. If you're going to have your home remodeled, right, you're going to take the first bid that comes out, a contractor comes by and say, oh yeah, I think it'll be $100,000. Oh sure, just start doing it. No, you get a second and third, maybe a 4th bid. So treat the company's business and resources like they're your own, because in fact they are. So I think there are things that you need to do at the front end that will allow people to, because you want their heart and soul, and you want them thinking about work, when there are other parts of life that are also important, right? But you certainly want to get your fair share of their resource. Good. Next question. Yes.
My name is Alec. What were some of your biggest breakthroughs that you had in your companies?
Well, so at Baxter, just one example. So moved to Munich in the middle of 1993, and Baxter was the major supplier to the hemophilia community. Does anybody know about the disease hemophilia? Okay, so typically the hemophilia patient is missing factor VIII, Sometimes they're missing factor 9, but there's a clotting cascade of 14 different factors, and if one of them is not working, then you bleed, you know, and you need factor 8 infusions, sometimes on a prophylactic basis all the time, or sometimes when you sense there's a bleed coming on, and then you inject the factor 8. Well, factor 8 in the 80s was made from large pools of human plasma, about 200 milliliters for thousands of donors, and you'd have these 2,000-liter vats of human plasma, and it was spun and it was frozen, and factor 8 precipitate could be made from that, and then lyophilized, little powder, and then the hemophilia patient would inject sterile water, mix it up, and treat themselves. Well, there was contaminated plasma, you know, in the mid-80s, and it led to the transmission of HIV to half of the hemophilia. The 20,000 hemophilia patients in the US, half of them developed AIDS, and over the course of about 7 years died. So in 1993, Baxter had been working for 10 years on recombinant factor 8, no human material at all, made from Chinese CHO cells, Chinese something ovary cells. I mean, I can't think of exactly what it was. It's a while back. But anyway, we got it cleared, and we're going to launch in Europe first. And I'm the vice president of marketing for Baxter Biotech Europe. And Matt, where should we price this? Well, I can tell you that we could have charged literally anything for that product, because the demand for a safe product was way up there. I mean, this is life and death, right? So what did we do? We thought really hard about it, and we charged about a 40% premium over what a plasma-derived factor 8 would be, because we were the dominant supplier, and our vision was that 50 years from now, we wanted to continue to be the dominant supplier for the hemophilia community for factor 8. So we needed to make our investment back, which is about $150 million over 10 years, but we didn't need to make it back immediately. We needed to make it back over time. And we didn't want to rip off the hemophilia community. So we felt like it was a measured premium that we put into place. And that was a great experience, and to me it was a breakthrough, and it was the right decision. And it wasn't just the marketing decision, but at the end of the day, you know, I was the one who was most responsible for it. Second breakthrough, I think, is when we finally got the FDA clearance, you know, then we could execute. You know, you got to have that clearance. And we felt like we couldn't influence it, because we ended up being a de novo application. And on a de novo application, at least at that time, the FDA did not have to get back to you in a certain period of time. So I was actually lobbying Senator McCain and Senator Kyle at the time to use their clout in Washington, because we were selling. You know, outside the US, it worked, everything was fine, it's a safe procedure, nobody was ever harmed by it. What are we waiting for? You know, and over time we could have 220 jobs in Mesa if we just get this damn thing approved, right? So anyway, I don't know if they were helpful at all, but finally we got it cleared. So that was helpful. Next question. Yes. Sekou.
Sekou. Do you think nowadays, this day and age, it would be better to have a company mainly run through online rather than just start it up, like have a better online company?
So hit me with that again.
Do you think in this day and age it would be better to have an online company and learn more about computer software to run your company? Because most people are online, so wouldn't that be a better way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I think if that's a possibility for whatever business you're getting in, then I think you need to maximize the opportunity that the online version of your business represents. You know, I don't know a lot about other industries. I've been in healthcare forever, right? So I'm a little limited from that standpoint, but obviously everything's moving to digital, right? Whatever it is, and wearables, you know, will be the key to diagnosing what all of our conditions are, and then it'll go to the cloud, and then it'll go to your service provider or your physician, and they'll figure out what you need to do to address whatever the issue is. So So I think it's part of the overall marketing and brand strategy that you have, and it's whatever makes sense. So all about efficiency, all about how do you get in front of enough potential customers in the most efficient way. So some businesses are conducive to that and others aren't. It's kind of each one you have to analyze. That back table hasn't said anything yet. I'm a little concerned about them. Oh, good, good. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to hear about the
And
book.
you're?
Oh, sorry. I'm Jesse.
Jesse, okay.
Yes.
Another J. We had a J up here. Jacob. Yep.
Okay. I just wanted to hear about the book list that you mentioned earlier. That's some good books that we could read.
Okay. So, you're back.
Okay.
You weren't fired or anything, were you? No. Oh, okay. Good, good. So, anything from Simon Sinek, you know, so he has a book called The Why, and it's about, it gets into purpose. So that's another way to attract folks. If you identify a purpose for your organization that other people find compelling and exciting and, you know, really gets their juices flowing. So, and then he also has one, Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last, and it's actually about the U.S. military and the submarine crews, and you know it's a great tangible example of how the admiral of the submarine and the first mate and the officers, they're always the last ones to get food. So the folks who are doing the work are the ones who are served first, and so, you know, without saying anything, it sends absolutely the right message that the folks on the ground, and whether they're taking orders from the customer or whether they're making that next engineering improvement, they're the most important people in your organization. And they will act that way if senior management operates with that philosophy and treats them as equals and as very important. So I love that book because it's a very tangible example of how an organization that's been around for a long time does that. And we don't think of the military that way. We think of it as very hierarchical and everybody salutes and all that. But there are examples where, you know, that servant leadership, really valuing everybody in the organization is practiced. So Ken Blanchard has written a lot of books, and Greenleaf has as well, on servant leadership, and I don't have the names of those books, but I really believe in that. And so the typical, you know, traditional corporate structure is, you know, every level that you move up, you know, there are perks associated with it. So at first, you know, you're just on an open table like this, and then you get a promotion, or you get your first cube. You know, gosh, that's exciting. You have a little bit of privacy. You know, you can put some pictures up on the wall. That's great. And then you get another promotion. My gosh, you're in your first office, right? And then when you get further promotions, it's like the size of your office is growing. Oh, now I've got a window office. Oh my God, that's great. And that's really old thinking, right? And then once you get to the top, right, it's like, wow, all these people work for me. You know, isn't that great? That's a real power trip. The servant leader doesn't think of it that way at all. As you move up in an organization, it becomes almost a sacred responsibility that, oh my gosh, I'm actually, my responsibility is to figure out how I can remove the obstacles that are preventing the team from getting the job done. So in essence, if you're thinking about it right, you're working for all of these people. So it's an unbelievable responsibility, and you better be up to the task. It's not about you, you know, and more and more, I think people are trying to understand that. And if the culture expresses that and the leader does, you can attract a lot of folks that way. So that whole concept of servant leadership, I think, is valuable. Raj Sisodia wrote a book a few years ago called Firms of Endearment. And that's about companies taking the time and effort to establish a purpose that's broader than just the business itself. So the business, want to grow sales, want to grow profits, want to get new products out in the marketplace. Well, that's great. But is there anything more grand than that? So the example at Ulthera was we didn't have a purpose for the first 6 years that I was there. And in fact, having something as grand as a broader purpose, it almost, I'm a little superstitious, it almost felt like, you know, karma. If you're thinking that far ahead, something's going to come up and bite us and the business is just going to go. But we had a speaker at one of these annual meetings that we had, biannual meetings, Roy Spence. And Roy wrote a book called It's Not What You Sell, It's What You Stand For, also about purpose. And so Roy is from Austin, Texas, and he's got this, we got a Texan here, I know, he's got this deep Texas accent. And he shows slides of him with every president since, I don't know, Herbert Hoover or somebody. But very impressive. He was one of 6 founders of an advertising agency in Austin. They had Southwest Airlines as one of their clients, Walmart, I mean, a lot of big clients. He did really well. He's retired from there. And so Terry Barnhill, our 5th employee, had heard him speak somewhere and said, I think he could deliver a really effective message. So I talked to Roy a couple times, told him about Ulthera for me, tightening and lifting of skin, and so he said, okay, I got it. I'm going to come and deliver a message. So he spent the first 20 minutes impressing us about all the people he knew, and so we were impressed, and he said, so in his deep Texas accent, he said, you know, I've been thinking a lot about Ulthera, and Ulthera's firming, it's lifting, it's tightening, but I submit to you that Ulthera's more than just firming, tightening, and lifting. Ulthera's more than just brow lifts. It's more than face lifts. Ulthera's about lifting lives. And we had about 100 people in the room at that time, and you know, we'd had a little bit of wine, and the whole room, you know, jumps their feet. Yes, we're not about face lifts and brow lifts. We're about lifting lives, and so, I mean, it was great. And then he ended shortly thereafter. And, you know, we all had a nice nightcap and then got up in the morning and we're sitting around the breakfast table. We say, what happened? What happened last night? You know, I thought we were about brow lifts and lower face and neck lifts. And are we really about lifting lives? And then we thought, should we have a purpose? Should that be our purpose? And I don't like to decide those things really quickly, so we thought about it, we massaged it. It couldn't be my idea, right? It had to be the team. And about 4 months later, we said, yeah, that's what we're about. And then we had to rationalize, so why is that? Well, the patients that are seeking an Ultherapy treatment, they're looking for a certain improvement in their appearance. But it's also improving the way they feel about themselves, right? It's improving their self-image, and they feel more confident as a result of, I look better, I feel better, I'm going to be more effective at everything we do. The practices that bought our technology for $75,000 and started treating patients ended up making a lot of money because they were charging $3,000 a procedure, and it cost them about $800. I think that's $2,200 of gross margin for the practices themselves. They were able to hire more people, offer more services, pay their existing staff more. So we were lifting the lives of the practices that bought our technology. And then we had a number of other examples. So in fact, we actually felt really good about that. And we started a relationship with a charter school that was a mile from our campus, 1,000 students in the Sequoia schools in Mesa. 800 of the students are at poverty level or below. 500 of the students are deaf. They have so many needs. You can't believe it until you go there. And so what can we do to help them? So we had an outreach program. We had a mentoring program. They got our old computers. We had food drives, and it was great, you know. So it can be very powerful. And so I think that's something. So that book, Firms of Endearment, and Roy Spence. And then finally, one more book, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish, is kind of a Bible. If you're going to start anything, I think he goes through everything that you'd want to know, things you should be aware of as you get a business up and running. There are times when cash is going to be the most critical. There are times when people is going to be will be the most critical thing, and he'll take you through. What about a BHAG? Have you established one? Are you going to establish one? What about a purpose? What about operating principles? What about, can you put your strategy in a one-page plan? And so we boiled down our strategy to one page. The board of directors loved it because it was clear on that one page where we're going, why we're going there, what our advantages were. There was a SWOT there. And so really effective tools if you're going to drive your own business. Thanks for asking that question. Yes? Mahina? Did you have yep, there it is.
So you have a lot of experience working globally. So I was wondering if you had any advice. Like my team right now, we're working with a team in Vietnam, and we're having a lot of problems with like communication and just like cultural differences. Do you have any advice for that? And like, how do you scale globally from there?
Okay, so hit me with the first part of that again. Teams?
Well, so my engineering project is working with a team in Vietnam. So
Okay.
we're working together on something. And
Other engineers in Vietnam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, other students, and we're having a lot of problems with just like getting going with our like communication, setting up the communication process, and just like being able to listen to each other's ideas despite cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just tough in general. So I wonder if you had any advice on that part.
Time zones are an issue, right? And so when do you talk to your teammates in Vietnam?
We've only had one live session of talking with them, and it was via just chat, and it was like 6 p.m. here, which is like really early in the morning.
Do you know what they look like?
Yes.
And they know what you look like?
Yes.
Okay.
Via webcam.
It is really, really hard work, but repetition is the key, and getting to know them as people first, and what motivates them and drives them, and then eventually moving around to what the business challenge is that you're trying to solve. But if you don't take that step to know one another personally and understand each other, the other part may never happen, but it'll happen a lot further down the road. So that would be my suggestion. And if you've only had one chat with them, I think you need to have dozens, and you need to schedule them on a regular basis, and you have to look forward to it, and you have to have an agenda. Okay, it can't just be, so have an agenda and work it so that, you know, and the first part might be a little kumbaya, right? Hey, tell me a little more about yourself and where you grew up and your family and all of that, and so that you know a little more about them. So that would be a suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, are we done or, nope, good question coming here.
I'm Allie, and I was just wondering, like, what types of activities and extracurriculars that you think companies find the most attractive and you think we should get involved in at our time at ASU?
So, I love to find potential employees who have been involved in competition one way or another. It doesn't have to be athletic competition, so it could be, you know, lots of, you know, could be a mud run or, you know, things, I mean, that's athletic in a way, but it's really fun, right? And so I think people who have been exposed to competition and like that, I want competitive people inside who are always trying to not necessarily beat someone, but achieve their potential. So I think that type of activity. I think physical activity is really important to keep your mind sharp. So I would encourage you all to pay attention to, you know, diet and getting enough sleep and actually exercising regularly. It'll pay dividends as far as your effectiveness of being able to communicate and a lot of other ways. I think if you can get involved in something where you're helping others, it's really clear. There's a need, whether it's the Sequoia schools where they have all those needs or some other charitable activity where you're using your skills to help others. I look for that as well, because you want people to be selfless and want the whole team to do well, not just themselves. And I try to shy away from folks who are too self-oriented and, you know, not really thinking of others. So I want examples of when was the last time you really helped somebody who was in need, and tell me what prompted you to do that. And do you do that regularly, or was that just a chance that you ran by somebody who needed their tire fixed on the side of the road, or what was it? So that's what's off the top of my head. And I think it can be very rewarding as well. You know, when you do things like that, it comes back to you in way more than you can imagine. So, yes. Fram.
Mm-hmm. I had a question about a point you made earlier about how like all the employees in a company have to, or at least should be like capable of being in like a sales position. Just like advertise the company and like market the products. Is that point more about like having all of the employees be like passionate about the product? Oh, okay.
It's exactly that. I don't really want the engineering team out in the field too much. Okay, occasionally, okay. But it's okay, it's okay. But there are those who are more suited to that than others. And it's actually when you have an engineer, you know, who can interact really effectively with customers, it's so powerful because the customer knows you're not trying to sell them anything. You're really just talking about the goodness of the technology. And it's so authentic. It comes across much better than a salesperson telling them that. But I guess the point was, you should feel proud of where you're working and why you're working there. And you should not be reluctant to tell anybody, oh, this is what I do and this is the technology that we're working on. I'm really proud to be part of that. And if you don't feel that way, you should be working somewhere else. So that's the point. Anybody working for a company that I'm involved with, I hope that they're telling everybody they know, hey, I'm really excited about what I do, you know, and so. Okay, lots of looking around the room. Great questions. I haven't heard from you. It's okay. Boston Bruins, the Rhode Island guy, right? Okay. Question? No? Anybody else? What else? So Michelangelo was credited for saying that the greatest danger for most of us is not that we aim too high and miss, but that we aim too low and achieve. So what that tells me is think about all of the possibilities and then multiply, right? And then aim as high as you can. Like the BHAG of $1 billion of value, you know, why not? And we raised $40 million over 3 rounds of financing, you know, and then generated $600 million return. That was great. But if we would, you know, shooting for something that's maybe a little bigger than you think you can get, it's surprising what you can accomplish, you know, and then you infuse others with that passion that, yes, that's where we're going and we're driving for that, and it's a worthwhile goal. And the efficacy goal was actually more meaningful because nobody really knows what $1 billion is, right? I mean, it's just a one with a lot of zeros on it. But I like to be numerical, and if you have a goal, you know, make sure you're measuring your progress toward that goal. Just a couple of other things to find a greater purpose. Okay. One other key point. So we all want to be positive about what's going on, but I think the important thing to you as leaders and owners of a business is if there's something negative happening, address it immediately. And so the term that I like is confront the brutal facts. Okay, when we got our first 10 Ulthera systems out in the marketplace, they weren't performing very well. Okay, and so we could have said, well, you know, yeah, but we've got other sales opportunities. And we decided, and in fact, the engineering came in and said, I think we should recall this product because we're getting all kinds of complaints. And so we sat down and we said, well, what do we have to do to improve it? Because first of all, is there any patient safety issue? And once we assured ourselves, no patients are going to be harmed by this, we said, okay, let's put the team together and let's address the issue one by one by one. And 3 months later, we had knocked them off. And the technology was performing very well. And by the time we launched in the US, it was really ready for prime time. And that's when the revenues started going up. So But the brutal fact was that it wasn't performing well, and we might have gotten a black eye in the marketplace. It wasn't so bad, but so you need to confront bad news very aggressively and not shy away from it. And then whatever you do, when you have your business plan together and you're seeking to raise money, always under-promise what you're going to do in that business, and then overperform. And that goes with just about anything. And entrepreneurs tend to overstate what their opportunity is and what they're going to accomplish, and things always take longer and always cost more. So you know that now, and so when you're tempted to say, my God, this is, we're going to be at $100 million in 3 years in revenue because everybody needs this, nobody's going to invest in you because it's not believable. You don't go from 0 to 100 million, except there are a few exceptions to that rule. But think about, again, it's authenticity and it's trust and it's whether people will buy what you're saying. And so if you ratchet back those expectations and then you over-deliver, you're a hero every time, every time. So with that, thanks for your attention. Really appreciate everybody showing up tonight.